Evan, what's going on? Welcome to Dad Edge, my friend.
Thanks for having me, man.
Dude, it's good to have you. I was on your show not too long ago. You and Shoddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is this podcast reciprocity?
I think so. Something like that, right? But yeah, that was a fun show. You guys, and for those of you guys in the audience, I know a lot of our guys are married and some are not married, and guys are always curious. I get a lot of emails from single dads like, hey, what resources are out there for single dads? So first, before we get into your story and your background, childhood, the whole 9 yards, let's first give the listeners what your podcast is all about.
Yeah. So the one that you were on was Single Parent Daily. And that began as kind of my cathartic journey to create a community that educated and inspired single parents after my divorce. And it was one of those things that, I kind of buried myself in my house outside of the time that I had my daughter. And I just wasn't willing or capable or vulnerable enough to really reach out for help. And so I kind of became this stoic, just kept everything inside. And that wasn't healthy. And the more that I met divorced parents, the more that I kind of opened myself up, the more I realized is that we all kind of feel that way to a certain extent. There's this shame. There's this kind of societal stigma that goes along with being divorced. And it's like, I don't know why that is. More than half of people who get married get divorced. So why is there still this stigma with it? So I really kind of started Single at the time Daddy Daily as this not just community, but it was so cathartic for me. I wanted to create something that, the resource that I wish that I had. And ultimately what I found out is, holy cow, there are a lot of single parents that need that. And so it really kind of mushroomed into, this movement of, just being a place where people could come and not feel judged, not feel, ridiculed. It didn't matter why you got divorced. All that mattered is you were divorced. You loved your kids. You wanted to be the best parent that you could be, and you needed some tools for that. And that's really how the etymology or the kind of the backstory of Single Parent Daily began.
Well, Evan, you're a guy. You're not supposed to feel feelings. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah. That's God, And it's funny, right? Like I grew up with a militant dad. You weren't supposed to have feelings, right? Like crying. Oh my God. And of course I played sports too. So that's, you're definitely not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to show emotion. You're supposed to be tough. And like, why are we teaching this crap? Like, what is the value of teaching kids, especially men, boys who are going to grow into be men, that there's something wrong with emotions? Like, we screw up so many relationships along the way, and whether that's with our spouses, whether that's just with friends, whether that's with workers, because we don't know how to be vulnerable. And that's a pandemic we need to address.
Evan, you're making me really uncomfortable with these words on feelings and vulnerability. And
do you need a hug?
Can we talk about something else? You are exactly right, my friend. And I grew up the same way. I think you and I are right around the same age. You heard my story on your show, like several father figures in and out. One most notably though, he was around the time I was 4 till I was 10. He was ex-military. Same thing. Only babies cry. Like that was his thing. Every time I cry, only babies cry, don't cry. And I think here's what I'll say in defense of that. And again, I tread carefully with this, but here's what I say in defense of this. When you hear advice from another man that says, man up, grow a set of balls, have another beer, it's not because that guy doesn't care about you. It's literally he doesn't know what else to say because he doesn't have the emotional intelligence and he doesn't have the skill set to understand like emotional intelligence. And I think our dads probably did the best job they could with the information that they had. And that was probably what they were raised with, right? So it felt right to them. But I agree with you. What I think we're robbing our kids of is the education of emotional intelligence, because you're right. We now have a generation of fathers who, and anger is a secondary emotion. It's not the first. Anger is a secondary emotion for something else going on. And when we're angry, if you ask a guy like, hey man, like what's going on? I don't know, I'm angry. What are you angry about? I don't know. I'm just pissed. They don't understand. They don't even know the step to take time and be like, all right, I feel angry. What's going on for me right now? Why do I feel this way? They don't even stop to do that. They skip over that and go like, I shouldn't be angry. I just need to stuff it down. I just need to be a man. I need to be stoic. And you're right. We're dealing with a generation of men now who have more mental health issues because of that repressing those emotions over and over and over again. And it's devastating our mentality. around this. Yeah.
Well, and you just said something, Larry. Think about it this way: is most men go to "I am angry." They even have a hard time saying "I feel angry." Like we condition men to not even be able to say "I feel angry." Or It's like I have to go right to, almost separate from the emotion. I am pissed. I am angry. It's not I feel that. And the second that we own that as a feeling, then we can start to uncover why we're feeling that way. What is the trigger? Is it, what is the feeling that's leading to anger as a secondary emotion? But we've become so conditioned as a society to even skip over that initial feeling of anger. It's like, I am angry. Like you're now just encompassing that entire emotion and saying like, I'm independent of that whole experience. I'm just a ball of, pissed off anger.
Yeah.
Hold my beer.
Actually, give me that. I want another drink of it. No, you're right. We've been blessed, man, with some amazing guests. And as we record now, we're in November, even though we're releasing this show in December. But as we record, I just had on Josh Tyler, who's former MMA. He's also the founder of Savage Gentleman. Like literally, like if you just Google an image of him, he looks like your typical like caveman, right? Like he would kill you in like a matter of 90 seconds if you got in the cage with this guy. And what did he come on and talk about? Communication, vulnerability, and the advantage of having emotional intelligence when it comes to raising kids and being married. Because he's like, think about it for a second. He's like, all these things we're talking about, exactly what you're talking about, Evan, is these are skills, right? And if you don't have the skills, what he compared it to is a lot like going into an MMA fight without ever being trained. It's like, oh, just go in there. Like if your trainer was like, grow a set of balls, be a man, get in there, and that was your training for an MMA fight, that would be like unheard of, right? But that's what
you'd get killed.
You'd get killed. But that's how like guys like me and you, that's how we were raised. Like, don't feel that. Don't do it. Just suck it up. Come on. Right. Versus the steps. Right.
Yep.
So share with us, what does your family look like? How many kids do you have? And what are the dynamics at play here?
So I have one daughter, 6 years old, going on 26, it feels like. And yeah, divorced about 3 years now, married. I was married for 3.5 years. We were together about 8. And, I think, I will say this. I'd like to take a quick step back because there's a little bit of backstory which I wanted to share on this particular podcast as we talk about being vulnerable. And I mentioned my dad in kind of the intro, but interestingly enough, that was my stepdad. And so I don't know my father. And my biological father and my mom got divorced when I was about 3 years old. And this was at a time when there wasn't really a parenting plan of sorts. It was like mom gets custody, dad gets visitation rights. My dad apparently was not very happy with that outcome. And so he kidnapped me and took me out of the state. And so I was on the FBI's missing children's report for quite a long time.
What?
The feds finally found me, brought me back to my mom, and I haven't seen my biological father since.
Do you remember any of this? How old were you?
I do actually remember it. And I remember he took me to Florida, and I remember being in this room in this playpen, and they would just leave me there. He wasn't there. Like he dropped me off with some people and then left. And so I don't remember how long, but I remember like just being in this room crying and nobody around, just myself by myself for hours. On top of that, I remember the horrible orange shag carpet that was in this room. And that just, apparently I've had an issue with shag carpet ever since.
Who doesn't? So
exactly. Yeah. That's one of the travesties of the 70s that we don't need to repeat. So they finally found me, brought me back, and it was a long road back to trusting my mom. I remember even being in therapy at 3 and 4 years old, just, trying to find this equilibrium. And I was an angry kid. And so, my mom found a great guy, remarried, and had a couple more kids. So my half brother and sister, and, things were great up until that point. And then I think that he quite frankly just was one of those guys that tried with all of the tools that he had, but didn't know how to reconcile this, this step kid with his new kids, with this whole dynamic. And so, he had some anger issues as well. And there was a lot of kind of that, you're not supposed to show emotion. There was a little bit of physical abuse. And I think it was more just that's how he learned, right? Like you do something bad, out comes the paddle. And so I kind of grew up in this really angry, adolescence. I hit my teenage years. I became really, really big. And so then it was the War of the Roses at our house, and it was knockdown, drag out fights. And, finally at 16, after a pretty big, physical altercation with him, I walked out the front door and I didn't go back for years. So I became a legally emancipated minor, put myself through high school and college, and was working 3 jobs trying to make ends meet, and just doing it all on my own. And that was kind of the evolution of my just kind of being an adult, and it put me at a significant disadvantage, not just economically but emotionally, because I carried that anger from that home life into the rest of my adolescence, into my teenage and my early 20 years. And it took me a long time to figure out that anger was not the way to make a better life for myself.
When you say you got big, was this you got out of shape, like you were emotionally eating, or did you like take your aggressions out on the gym? And
I took it out on the gym. Okay. I was a 5'10", 185 pound, 6% body fat, just beast. And in fact, I had numerous interventions in high school where they thought that I was on steroids. So I'm like, no, I've just got anger management problems.
That reminds me of a time freshman year in high school. They thought I was eating too many cupcakes, and they had an intervention. It was true, actually. So I was eating way too much. So.
Wow. Oh, I was eating a lot. Like I remember just bringing like a loaf of bread and just jars of peanut butter, because I was so hungry all the time. Like 5,000-6,000 calories a day, but you do weights in the morning and then practice afterwards. And then I actually, one of the jobs that I had when I was 16 was I worked at a health club. So then I would go back after school and then I'd work out more. I'm like, I was just,
Oh my God, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? That we should actually, I know we're going to talk about your book, but you should actually write a diet book, how to eat a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter and stay at 6% body fat. I think it would be a bestseller.
I think it would be. And the only chapter 1, be a teenager. Chapter 2, once you hit 20, stop doing it.
Yeah. Don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
No, all kidding aside, man, we try to keep things kind of light and funny. I mean, but I want to acknowledge a few things about your story, man. Wow. What a crazy journey. Like I'm picturing you in this playpen with the shag carpet and crying, and no one's even tending to you, then being taken out of your father's care, your biological father's care, by the FBI, being reunited with your mom, being in therapy when you were 3 and 4 years old. No wonder you struggled with anger, right? And then leaving the home. Now, what is the dynamics right now with your biological father? I get the impression there is no relationship. Is that correct?
So I didn't know where he was, and this was kind of pre-internet, and so I did hire a private investigator when I was like 18 or 19 to track him down, just because I was curious. And I was, I wasn't 21 yet, but I might have had a couple cocktails one night and worked up some liquid courage. And I called him, and he answered the phone. I said, is this so-and-so? And he said, yeah. And I confirmed, because, we've got the same middle name. And I said, this is Evan. And he hung up on me. And so that was it. And
that was it.
That was it. And so talk about anger, right? Because you have this sense of abandonment. And I've had abandonment issues my entire life as a result of this. So then the abandonment just grows exponentially greater. Like, I called you. I'd always envisioned that maybe he didn't know the whole story. Maybe I didn't know the whole story. You start to fabricate these kind of internal dialogues about what really is the case. And my expectation was that we would have a conversation, right? Like, hey, oh, you're my son. How you doing? And so when that happened, it just, something kind of shut off in me. And so I really became very guarded in my emotions. I became very guarded in my feelings. And I really had a hard time letting people in after that. And it wasn't until much later, when my daughter was born, that I was really able to close the loop on that, or close the chapter on that part of my life. And I recognized that once my daughter was born, there's not a force on this planet or in this universe that could keep me from her. And so knowing that, I recognized that whatever his journey was, whatever brought him to that place that, he took me and left me, that he hung up on me, that was his journey. I don't know why, and it doesn't matter, because, that's not the type of person that I would really care to have in my life anymore. And it's like, once you become a parent, you recognize what you're willing to do to be a parent. And when you see anything short of that, you're like, well, good luck.
God, man, no wonder this topic is so important to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because you know firsthand how this feels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So does it, I know you said you've dealt with abandonment issues your whole life. I have too. I mean, your story and mine are very similar, except for my biological father and I, we were reunited when I was 30, and that was by mistake. We were in the same coffee shop. As
That's such a cool story.
Yeah. As life would have it. Right. But I agree with you. There isn't a force on this. I tell my wife all the time, I was like, if anything were to ever happen to us, I would want 50% custody. There's not a thing in the world that would want to keep me away from my kids. Right. Mm-hmm. So now let's switch gears to your mom. Do you still have a relationship with her at all?
I do. Yeah. And I think, it was really difficult for me to see things from that perspective of a lot of people got hurt after her divorce and, me being taken away. I mean, I can't imagine the suffering that she went through. And so being young and even into my 20s and even my early 30s, it was really easy for me to put a lot of blame on her. And so we had a tumultuous up and down relationship up until my daughter was born. And then it was really easy for me to everything just kind of clicked in place. It's like, oh, she was really hurt by a lot of that too. And she had her own issues. She had her own pain that came out of that divorce and losing a kid for a little bit. So we were really kind of able after my daughter was born to heal a lot and to really re-cement a relationship that went so far beyond what I would consider the kind of superficial one that we had up until my daughter was born. So from that standpoint, we had one throughout the years, ups and downs, but now it's been really good. And it's, we can get on the phone every single day and chat. And even though we don't, because I'm way too busy, but it's nice to know that we have that relationship. And it's really nice to know that she is so enthralled with being a grandmother. So it's she builds that relationship with my daughter as well. And so we kind of have that, I would almost say symbiotic nature now.
Wow. What a crazy story. and you're so calm about it. I have to think that and what are you you're in your 40s, right?
41.
Okay. I have to think that there had to be a pocket of time in your life where you were maybe going through the victim mentality.
Oh, totally.
Okay. Yeah. When did that all stop?
After my divorce.
Wow.
Really? After the pain of my divorce, I really had to come to grips with a lot of my own issues, a lot of my issues that really led to my divorce, a lot of those abandonment issues that, and I'll be completely candid. I think one of the things that comes from abandonment issues is this desire to please everybody. Because you're afraid they're going to walk out the door. And in that becomes this inauthentic nature where I'm trying to be what everybody wants me to be, not who I am myself. And so in my marriage, that really kind of caught up to me. I wasn't the authentic person that I needed to be to show up as a husband, as a man, as a father every single day, because I was so afraid of her leaving that I was trying to be everything that I wasn't. And then after the marriage ended and I really, really kind of went through a lot of the work that I did, a lot of therapy and, recognized that, okay, this is the chance for me to be who I am, to embrace all of the suck of my life, to recognize that doesn't define me, but it is a part of my journey. And, to move past that victim mentality of just being like, okay, I can decide every single day who I am. I live in this principle-centered existence. Thank you, Stephen Covey, for that. That's the best divorce book, by the way. If anybody's ever wanting, just pick up the 7 Habits. That is a book that helped redefine my existence after my divorce. And it was just I would read, I would journal, I would read, I would journal, and in that process, I was able to kind of come out of a lot of the anger, abandonment, the finger pointing, which is very typical, and really refocus on who I wanted to be, who I needed to be as a man, as a father, as a business owner, as just someone who really wanted to show up as the best version of himself every single day.
Dang, man. And how long have you been divorced? I think you said 3 years?
3
years?
No, shit. It's up. Sorry. I don't know what rating we're.
Very good.
I think we're going on 4 years now.
Okay. And what's the dynamic relationship with her now? Do you guys get along, or is it tough?
In the beginning, it was brutal.
I'm sure
it was a brutal experience. And she was angry, justifiably. But I think in the last year, we've really turned a corner, and we always put our daughter first, but now we're able to do it in a way where there's collaboration, and we're never going to be taking family vacations together.
Sure.
But we've really shown up as two people who want to show our daughter that regardless of our differences, that we can still work together for the benefit of something, for our daughter. And
Right.
So the last year has been fantastic. I will say that she's an incredible mom. She puts so much energy into our daughter, into the things that she needs to do. And I mean, crikey, COVID, homeschooling, it's just been, like if anybody was going to develop a heroin addiction, it would be 2020 right now. Because
I think a lot of people have.
Yeah, possibly. So yeah, it's been a fun road, and when I say fun, I'm being sarcastic. It's been a challenging road.
Yeah.
But we've definitely turned a corner and really made it possible to show up as two parents really committed to our daughter.
Okay, so here's what I'd like to do. I want to serve the married men in this next segment, and I want to serve the guys who might be considering divorce right now, and then the guys who are freshly divorced and they're trying to learn a thing or two as they're evolving past this, relationship. So let's talk to the guys who are married first. So if you could go back in time, and you said that you had abandonment issues, you had some things going on, that you were dealing with. And I think what you really did there is you illustrated a lot of us guys. I mean, a lot of families come from divorce backgrounds. And I think that does show up in a way of people pleasing. And it's like the nice guy. And I think Robert Glover really hit it home with No More Mr. Nice Guy in that book. But if you were to have a conversation with Evan, like you were like literally able to sit, 41-year-old Evan. And how old were you when you got married?
First? I was 33.
Okay. So let's just say 41-year-old Evan is able to sit down with 30-year-old Evan right now. Okay. And you're like, all right, man, like, look, this is me. This is you 11 years from now. But let me give you some advice before you enter into the next chapter of your life, and that being married. You're a few years away from it, but here are the things that you need to get ready for. And here are the things that are going to allow you to show up as the best version of you versus the version you think you need to be.
Great question. The first thing I would say is start stem cells early. I would tell 30-year-old Evan is get comfortable being vulnerable and find your authentic self. Know that not everybody's going to like you, and there's 8 billion people on this planet. If 10 people like you, that's all that matters. If one person likes you, that's all that matters. But more importantly, if you like you, that's the most important relationship you're going to ever have. So find a way to fall in love with yourself. Don't put on a show for the world. Be your authentic self and figure out who that is and be unambiguously that person every single day. There's nothing wrong if someone disagrees with you. And I was so afraid of people disagreeing with me. So I always played this, dare I say, chameleon. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. And this is who I need to be to impress you. It's like, I don't give a crap if anybody likes me now. So I think that would be the biggest thing, that if you're going to be in a successful relationship, in a successful marriage, you have to be unambiguously yourself. You have to be authentic, every single moment of every single day. And if that means having a tough conversation with your wife, have the tough conversation. Don't sweep it under the rug. Don't placate. Don't let that stuff fester, because that's what causes that cataclysmic explosion down the road. There's nothing wrong with learning to disagree with your partner, as long as you can do it in a respectful way, so that you're not damaging the relationship, but you're growing together, whether that's in conflict or in love. And I guess that's one thing I just wasn't good at.
Man, I'm so glad you're bringing this up, because, looking at your Instagram, you're like, you're youthful, you're like in shape, back in the day, in shape. Like you always think like, oh, this guy's got the plush life. There's nothing ever wrong. Super confident, no abandonment issues there whatsoever. But I think to some degree, no matter what it looks like on the outside. Probably all of us deal with that at some level, some degree, right?
Totally.
And I like that advice with finding some way to love and accept yourself, be the real authentic you. And I know we're toying around. We're on the borderline of some guys just turning this off because and it's not that the message isn't strong, it's the words. It's like vulnerability, authenticity. It kind of makes us feel like, but there's power in that. There's a lot of power in accepting yourself for all the good things and the not so pretty stuff.
Yeah.
And Go ahead.
I would say that's the big thing, right? Because we as guys don't want to look at the bad stuff. We can look at it all day, and you brought up Instagram, right? Like, well, I look good with my shirt off, or I'm dating this person, or I've got this going for me. But it's like it's in those private moments where we have to look at the stuff that we're not okay with, and you either got to make the decision as a guy. And if you're the type of guy that's going to turn this off, then maybe you're not ready to hear this. But if you're not, and you're sitting on the edge of your seat, find a way to fix those things. Do the work. There's so many guys that go to work, 9 to 5, and they come home and they sit on the couch and they watch ESPN and they wonder what happened in the last 20 years of their life because it's Groundhog Day. Figure it out. Write the 10 things that you don't like about yourself down on a piece of paper and create a plan to fix them. And know that you're doing something not for your wife or your kids, but for yourself. Because when you wake up and you look at yourself in the morning and you're making that commitment to you, your relationship with yourself and your relationship with everybody else gets so much better. And now you can figure out what it's like to really be alive in this world.
I agree. And that's something that guys are really, really bad at the most part, is that self-care. In fact, this notion and this viewpoint of I need to take care of everybody else and I can't take care of me, it comes from this really, really noble place in men, but it's a huge, huge miss. It's almost like running your car as long as it will go and be like, I don't need to stop for gas. This car is good. It'll just keep going. And then we look at the car like, why aren't you still running? It's it's the same thing with us. I totally agree with you. Moving on to your relationship now. And I apologize. The woman you're dating now, what's her name?
Jana,
right. And so you guys have been together how long?
Not very long.
Okay.
Probably, 3 or 4 months.
Okay. 3 or 4 months. Now, what I really want to target here is the men who are still married, or even the men who are freshly divorced, right? What things are you bringing to that relationship? The mentality differences. And I know you've already hit upon the authenticity, the self-care, but how is this version of Evan different? And what are you doing differently in this relationship? And speak to the men who, by the way, if you've been married for 10 years, you're still going to get a lot of value out of what Evan's going to talk about, because we can always bring new things to a relationship that's been around for years.
I think the most important thing is that there's no codependency at all. And that's interesting because we kind of were forced to live together as a result of COVID. She flew up here right before the world, a week before the world went into lockdown. And, it's like, okay, well, makes more sense for you to be here than to go home. So let's just stay here. But in that, we made this commitment that, hey, it's no codependency, right? You still have your life. I still have my life. I came from this Italian family where my mom was a hopeless romantic. My grandfather was a hopeless romantic. And it was this idea of you complete me. And I'm sorry, but Jerry Maguire has ruined an entire generation of people. No, you complete yourself. It's, you need to be a complete individual. Be that with another complete individual. And guess what? When you guys get together, it's exponential growth. So that was the first conversation. It's you do you. Even in COVID, figure out what you need to be healthy as a well-adjusted individual. I'm going to do the same. Respect is the biggest one. We're going to disagree. We're not always going to have the same viewpoint on things. But if we can communicate with respect and we can listen, active listening. I love the saying is God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth so we can listen twice as much as we speak. If you can learn the skill of active listening, listen to what that person has to say and don't just wait for your opportunity to talk, but process what it is that they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're saying. Give weight to that and then respond accordingly. And even if you have to say something like, wow, I didn't know you felt that way, or that's a great point. I don't know if I'm really ready to respond to that. Can you give me a little time to kind of process that? And let me get back to you later today or tomorrow. Um, I think we have this kind of like, what's the old thing? Never go to bed angry. That's bullshit. Sleep on the couch, but just at least be willing to say like, man, I'm really not happy right now. Let's take a break. Let me, give me overnight to kind of process this. I'm going to go over here. And then I really want to get back to you first thing in the morning. I learned that from therapy is if you're going to break, set a specific deadline, right? Because you never want that stuff out in limbo. Women are like, well, when's he going to get back to me? Is that in an hour? Is that 6 months from now? I don't know. It's like, no, I need a break. Give me an hour. I'm going to go walk around the block. So I think the third most important thing though is just fun, play. Make time for play and fun every single day. And whatever it is that brings you together in your relationship, focus on that. Grow that. The grass is greener where you water it. So guys, if you're in that relationship where you're thinking, well, maybe there's something better out there. No, there's not. If that your mentality is you think there's something better out there, no. The grass is greener where you water it. So if you're in a relationship that's got good roots, a good solid foundation, grow that. Find the thing that brought you guys together and water that. What makes you happy together as a couple? Is it making dinner over a bottle of wine? Do that. Is it hiking? Is it biking? Whatever defines the fun and the enjoyment in your relationship, do that, because I guarantee that's the thing that, carries us through all of the financial hardships, the pandemics, the kid's not sleeping, the kid just pooped himself. It's like all the stuff that's life that we can laugh at later, but it's big in the moment. That's just life. But, celebration of life with our partner is essential.
The grass is greener where you water it. That is like a quote of quotes, my friend. I love that quote. And you're right. I think if you're tempted and there's other yards that you're looking at, you might be standing on dead grass, right? Because maybe you haven't taken the TLC, you haven't taken the time. A lot of guys, when they come and do life with us in the mastermind, I ask them, when was the last time you and your wife were on a date night? And if they're like, oh, I'm like, oh, that's not a good sign. Like, yeah. Weekly date night. Okay. Oh. And I say weekly because if you can do it bi-weekly, that's a good thing. That's once a month thing. That's not enough. You got to have time to not be mom and dad. And I love your point on the deadline. And that's just, to be honest, that's just really good, respectful communication. Like, hey, I'm not going to give you the silent treatment for 3 days, but I do need 12 hours. Yeah. You're right. Because that way the other person at least has some sort of deadline of when you're going to come back. I get it. So, okay. So thank you for the advice. We've covered a lot and I appreciate it. But before we jump into your book and what you're going to be doing for, to support, and I'm not going to give it away, but to support, the end of human trafficking, right? What have we missed? What have we not talked about as it pertains to being a single dad or developing new relationships or even, inner work? Is there anything that you're really excited to talk about we haven't yet?
One of the things that came out of my divorce after I really went through the dark days of my divorce was something that I'm pretty excited to share with people. And it's not that innovative, but I called it the divorce bucket list. You see, in marriage, and then even divorce, there are things that we forget to do for ourselves. We'll call that the self-love or the self-work. And that could be something that, hey, I always wanted to do this when I was married, but I didn't get the opportunity. And this is something that ultimately, as I found through our podcast, married people have said, well, I did my divorce bucket list, but I called it my married bucket list. And so I took the 10 things that I wanted to do at that moment that I neglected in myself when I was married, that I neglected in myself going through the dark days of my divorce. I wrote them down and I did them. I created SMART goals. They were specific, they were actionable, they were time bound, they were relevant, they were all the things. And so I gave myself deadlines. I'm going to do this. Now, I wanted to join a climbing gym. I'd never gone rock climbing. I wanted to do it. So I did it. I met some amazing people that way. I wanted to learn to play the piano. I bought a piano and started taking lessons. I wanted to pay off my blood-sucking attorney. I did that. It was so, in creating these goals, I recognized that the life that I thought was going to be this post-divorce just, misery, suck, ended up becoming really profound for me. I was able to open myself up to new experiences, to new people, and I didn't have to go on some dating app to do that. I didn't have to subject myself to this idea that I needed to find someone to have value in my life. I needed to find the fun and enjoyment in my life, independent of being a father. And in doing such, it opened up an entire world for me that I just didn't even know was there.
Dang, man. And again, what are these bucket lists called? You said there's the married
It's
bucket.
the divorce bucket list. And then, so I started it as the divorce bucket list. And then some married followers of the show ended up saying, what you said made so much sense. I decided to, my husband and I are doing the married bucket list. So we have the 10 things that we want to do independent of each other. And we make it so that we support each other in the achievement of those goals.
I love that, man. My wife and I did a bucket list. We haven't actually done the individual one, but we have done the together one. And that's even just going through the exercise of doing it is really, it gives you a lot of clarity of some really cool things that you can do, because you're right. I mean, a lot of us, and I can't remember exactly where you said it, but it's the groundhog day. It's the drift. It's that wash, rinse, repeat, where it's like, oh crap, like we're like 60 years old. Where did that time go? Versus like taking that productive pause and really like, hey, what do we want to do here? We've got one life to live. What do we want to do? My wife and I go through this process every January where we plan the year. And we take a look at that bucket list. We talk to the family like, hey, what experiences would be most meaningful that we would be celebrating at the end of the year? What would you guys like to do? And there's some amazing ideas that just come in to that one meeting that we always have in January. So I love that advice, man.
And like, look, it's, businesses get together, not just, annually, but quarterly to map out the future, right? What are the goals? What are the objectives? Successful businesses thrive under that type of planning. So there's this epidemic, if we'll call it, of people who get married and then they settle. And it's not that they settle for another person. They settle into a life that is so complacent that they're not creating structure for the relationship. What do you want out of this? How is that relationship a catalyst for your own growth? How are you acting as a catalyst for your partner's growth? And M. Scott Peck said in A Road Less Traveled is true love is nurturing someone else's spiritual and emotional growth. And if we fall back to that concept, how is my life and my commitment to this person helping them achieve what it is that they want? And how am I inspiring them to actually reach for something more rather than, what are we going to watch on Netflix tonight?
Yes, indeed. Because you don't want to look back on your life and be like, well, we did watch a lot of Netflix. So that was good, right? Yeah, man.
I saw a great social media meme the other day, and it was a COVID related one. It was like, I'm so excited. I just finished Netflix.
I would not be celebrating that. That would be a terrible goal. Well, let's get to Mia and the Go Away Monster Spray. This is a children's book that released on December 7th. It's out now as we release this particular episode. Tell us about this book, and most importantly, tell us what you're doing. Tell us about this beautiful mission.
Yeah. So when my daughter was 4 years old, like I think a lot of other kids, the ubiquitous monster showed up in her closet. And so this was at a time too where I'd been divorced, a while, and we were still co-sleeping. And to be candid, that was not because she wanted to, it was because I wanted to. I kind of needed that. I needed to, to feel her close to me, especially since she wasn't there half the time. And it got to the point I'm like, okay, now we have to move on. You have to go to your own bed. We have to establish, that's, you have your own room and daddy has his own room. And so the monster showed up pretty quickly after that. And any parent who's gone through this knows that logic will not send the monster away. You open up the closet door, you turn on all the lights. Second, you show them that there's no monster in the closet, but the second you shut the door, the monster comes back. And so basically what I did was I created this Go Away Monster Spray. We took lavender oil and, added some coloring to it. And I said, okay, the magic of this is that we cut off one of your locks of hair and we put it in the bottle. And that's the magic that keeps the monster away. So go up into her room, spray it everywhere, and it worked. And the beauty is that she could take that back and forth to her mom's house, bring it back to my house. And so she had this thing that was hers. It was her magic. We created it together. And it was something that I was so excited about. I'm like, I love this idea and I wanted to share it. I wanted to just write a story about it. And I did. And then along the way, basically along the way, I was like, well, what am I going to do with this? It's just a children's book. Anybody who's written a children's book knows it's like a cutthroat business. I'm like, I just don't want to write something to write it. And so at the beginning of this year, I was supposed to run 100 miles to raise awareness and money for a charity called Operation Underground Railroad, whose sole focus is to end human trafficking, especially the sex trafficking of kids. And ultimately, a training injury in COVID stopped me from doing that run. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, I wrote a book about keeping the monster away. And maybe there's a chance that I can use this book to keep the real monsters away. And so I paired with Operation Underground Railroad, and basically 100% of the profits go to this charity. This is an incredible charity. They do services all over the world where ex-CIA, special forces, Navy SEALs, Delta Force guys will go in and physically remove kids from sex trafficking rings. But the beauty is that they also work with local governments so that the governments can get involved and stop this from repeating. So they'll actually, prosecute these people, put them in jail. And I can't think of as a parent, I can't think of a war that we need to win more than this. There's so many noble charities out there, and I believe me, I'm focused on plastics in the ocean. I'm focused on climate change. But if we can't keep our kids safe, the rest of the earth doesn't matter. We don't deserve to inherit the earth. If we can't stop this one thing from happening, we don't deserve to live here. Because I just, and it's a war of attrition, right? It's a war that requires resources. And with technology, the bad guys are getting more evolved. And so it's up to us to provide the people who have the skills and the resources to end this, to end it forever, so that no kid ever has to worry about being trafficked. No kid ever has to be worried about taking away from their parents and wondering where their parents are at, or why are these bad guys doing this to me? And so 100% of the proceeds of this are going to Operation Underground Railroad with the goal of raising $2 million, which it's not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's anything that we can do to make a dent in this war.
Man, this is unreal. Well, guys, I know you can find this for sure on Amazon. I just want to make sure, where else can people find your book, Evan?
Go to Amazon. That's okay. I'm trying to eliminate as many transactions in the deal. It's like, I want to optimize profits as much as possible for Operation Underground Railroad. So go to Amazon, Mia and the Go Away Monster Spray. It's $19.99. 100% of the profits go right to Operation Underground Railroad, and it's a great book. It's fun. I don't know if I'm the best kids author, but I had a blast writing it. My daughter loves it. She loves taking it to school and showing it to, or she used to love taking it to school and showing it to all of her friends. Now she does it on Zoom. But it's I can't think of a more noble cause. And as parents, I think as parents, we ultimately feel like there's a responsibility, not just for our kids, but for other kids. And so this is one of those things where we can directly impact the future of other kids who don't have the benefit of being ours.
Amen, man. Well, guys, check it out. We'll have a link for you guys. We'll actually have a link straight for Evan's book in the show notes. So not to worry. We're going to have, if you want to follow Evan, we'll have all of his links as well. So Evan, just to make sure, if people want to follow you on Instagram, I know you got a huge following over there. You've got the Single Parent Daily Show as well. Any other resources that you want to share that are out there to help support parents who are separated, divorced, people who are married, anything else you want to share?
Singleparentdaily.com is a great resource. We link to a lot of other people. We link to a lot of resources that I think are great voices in the community of being single parents. If you're looking for health and wellness, go to completehuman.com, which is my other digital content platform. There we do a lot of stuff, documentaries, video content, just biooptimization, all things that are relevant to keeping our kids healthy as well as ourselves healthy, especially, which is, in this pandemic, which is more important than ever.
Very cool. Well, gentlemen, you don't have to worry about all that. We're going to have all the links in the show notes. Just go to gooddadproject.com/299 for this show. It's episode 299 of Dad Edge. So, Evan, this was awesome. Thank you for taking us on this journey of when you were just a little guy up to now. what your life looks like, the things that you've learned. And thanks for blessing us with your story and lessons, my friend.
Thank you, Larry. I really appreciate all you're doing, and keep it up, man.
You bet. You bet. All right, gentlemen, go out and live legendary. Take care.